In the Idaho 4 case, just so much has been hidden, sealed, redacted. It's just really very mind-boggling to figure that there's so much that's just behind the scenes that we're not supposed to know about. But you know what? Sometimes if you look really closely at what we can see in between the lines in some of these documents, sometimes you can in fact get an idea of what is going on in the case.
And sometimes going through this information, you wish you had a forensics expert to help you out. Luckily, we have one today. Going through the Koberger case, it seems like we're going through documents and piling things on, and none of it makes any sense. I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers, and today our special guest that's going to help us kind of figure out what's going on has a background in forensics, is an EMT, and she also is studying forensic psychology, and she is, many people will know her from her YouTube channel, Forensic Frenzy.
Yay,
Hello, everyone.
How are you?
Great. How are you guys?
We're good. We were very intrigued by some things that you presented on your channel, and we wanted to have you kind of explain and help us figure out what's going on behind the scenes. Right, Lainey?
Yeah. And one of the things, too, that we really appreciate about your videos is that, as I may have mentioned off camera, you go through videos very clear, very concise, and I think that you approach things from a way that people who aren't familiar with the case or who are just learning about the case for the first time, I think you make it really easy for people to follow along. And nice, slow-paced videos. Seems a little bit more put together than the chaos we have here sometimes, but super enjoyable. I know, never
Thank
chaos
you.
here.
So you started out from the premise, which I was impressed with, and here on this show, I don't like to go back. I like to look ahead. I like to say, what's going to be the next step in this case? What's going to happen at trial? What's going to happen at the next hearing? How's the judge going to rule on things? So I like to look forward, and I like the way that you kind of presented it, that, maybe we missed a few things in some of the documents back in January, February, March, April, May of 2023. And maybe they kind of tell us what's going on behind the scenes. So I was impressed with that. How did you come up with that?
So I've been back and forth about the defendant. And I kind of went through the documents at one point in time, looking at it through Anne's eyeglass. And at this point, when I built this, I've been looking at it through the eyes of the prosecution. So I do go back. I know you guys like to go forward, but I do go back. And the only reason why is because I feel like that's how you plan for what's coming in the future. So
Right.
I was just trying to figure out first, what does Anne need to be prepared for? And then
Oh, boy.
I was just as lost as her. So I changed perspective, and now trying to figure out what the prosecution is preparing for. That's how I think I found the answer.
Really? So let's take a look at kind of the way you went along, but we patterned it in the way that we usually pattern it with these slides. So, Lainey, why don't you start off on this journey?
Yeah, so one of our primary topics for today, we're going to be talking about the Koberger Reddit survey. So the survey asked for participants to provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision making when committing a crime. And why is that so important?
The reason why that's so important is because the Reddit survey allegedly was conducted as a part of Koberger's master's thesis. Now, we knew about the survey from the probable cause statement that we have from December. So they didn't seek out a warrant for the survey until after he was arrested on January 25th. The very next day, they served that warrant. And a few days later, about 2 weeks later, the warrant was received back with a receipt of inventory, and they never opened it until March 22nd. Now, on March 22nd, Ann Taylor also had her private investigator, Richard Batanti, put together an affidavit, which became a part of court filing, that stated that they believed, actually, they knew that Bethany Funk had exculpatory information, that she had made various statements to various law enforcement officers at various times, and that portions of her statements were potentially exculpatory for Mr. Koberger. So
Right.
on March 23rd, they open up, or I'm sorry, on March 22nd, they open up the Reddit document. They take a look at it. They put it into the evidence, like in the actual evidence. They download it and put it in. And then the very next day, there is a ex parte motion from Ann Taylor, and she is asking for the service for Bethany Funk. And on the same day, March 23rd, we have the search warrant filed. So,
And that's the search warrant for the Reddit, correct?
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Right.
So,
So,
putting all of that together, we just have that. We knew about it for a while, we got it. And then on the day of Bethany Funk, we suddenly need it.
interesting.
It makes my
And
skin crawl.
on March 22nd, there's an affidavit in support of the motion for out-of-state service to compel Bethany Funk to participate in the preliminary hearing. And in the affidavit, which has mysteriously disappeared now, Bethany Funk was said to have been interviewed by police on several occasions. She disclosed things she heard and things she saw. Quote, "It became known to me," Richard Battanti, "that Bethany Funk has information material to the charges against Mr. Koberger. Portions of information Ms. Funk has is exculpatory to the defendant. Ms. Funk's information is unique to her experiences and cannot be provided by another witness." So, forensic, let me just back up to the previous slide. What do you think the connection is between this affidavit coming out on March 22nd and the March 23rd return of the search warrant being filed with the court?
So I believe that on March 22nd, Richard Battanti made that bold statement that Bethany did have this exculpatory evidence, this material evidence. It was unique to her. And that day, they decided to download and put into evidence the Reddit survey. The Reddit survey would have called for correspondence. The responders would be a part of that Reddit survey search warrant. And I believe that the information that Bethany had that the defense wanted to pose as exculpatory, the prosecution plans to propose is more inculpatory because there is a responder from the Reddit survey that Bethany is aware of. However, they've linked the two people through the Reddit survey, and they have pieces that prove both of those individuals were at the home that night.
That's fascinating. That's really fascinating. So, maybe we should get a little bit deeper into this and do the rest of the documents first. But so you're saying that you think that both sides know that there were two people in that house at 1122 King Road that night?
Yes, and they are going to use it against each other. Now, if we fast forward, and this is completely off script, guys, but if we fast forward to his alibi,
Yep.
his alibi was something that made no sense. But if you think about it
No.
this way, I promise it does. It does make sense. The two sides are going to use this against each other. They are all
Mhm.
aware that there was more than one person in the home. So
Mhm.
they're going to play that against one another. The prosecution is going to put forth in court through experts that there was two attackers, and Brian's alibi was, I was out, I was driving, but I was alone. So Anne is preparing already through Brian's alibi to say that if there were two attackers, prosecution, then it can't just be my client, but also you only have my client. So it's hard to say that there's two attackers unless both parties know that there's someone else. Anne's just going to say, my client wasn't there. It was the someone else. My client was alone. The prosecution is actually just going to say both of these people converged upon this home and the attacks happened.
So are you saying that you think, if all this is true, that it was Brian Koberger and someone that he found through the Reddit survey, or that it was two
Correct.
completely different people and Brian was just driving around that night? Which is it?
Nope. So there are two people who the Reddit host and one of the responders. That is what I believe the prosecution is driving at, and exactly why on March 22nd, the day of the exculpatory evidence, this Reddit survey became important, even though they knew about it since at least December 30th when the PCA statement was public. Well,
That's
it was
incredible. Go
public in
ahead.
the court at that time. We didn't get it until the 5th, but everyone in the court, they knew what was going on December 30th. And at that point, they knew about the Reddit survey. How long before that they knew?
Right.
That's interesting too. There's a lot going on with that Reddit survey. We have
Yeah.
two. One's for Kaylee, one is for the defendant. And if you look at the defendants, it's intriguing. There's rumor that the Reddit survey was conducted for his master's thesis. I do not believe it was. I know that there was someone from the DeSales University who spoke on behalf of the Reddit survey, but the actual search warrant for that survey seeks Reddit information from Brian Koberger's account for a very specific time period from
Right.
June
Right.
1st of 2022, which is when he was either moving to Washington or had already gotten there.
Right. I didn't understand whether as you pointed out before, whether it was part of his master's work or whether he did it on his own. If you go into the Reddit documentation where he put the survey out or posted the survey, there are 3 DeSales University emails, his and 2 other people. But DeSales University, it's my understanding, has never come out and said, yeah, that was ours. They haven't said it wasn't theirs, but I mean, it's odd that he was using their emails. And I actually looked at the survey before we did this, and it goes on with what, 28, 29, 30 questions that I can't imagine that any of that really, I mean, you would know better than me from your education in forensics. I can't believe that a university or a college that teaches forensics would really get that deep into how a criminal feels, what a criminal's psyche is, how a criminal makes decisions, how you go into, like, I'm sure you know all about BTK, how you go into a family's house and decide, the mother goes first, the father goes second, the kids go third, take the daughter in the basement. I mean, I can't envision how a university would really get that deeply into it. Can you? Or am I being crazy?
So maybe I'm just making excuses, but I can maybe.
Really?
And it's weird, but depending on what his general topic was, and the outcome, like how the paper came together. So when you create a thesis, the idea is to identify an issue in your field. And you have to come up with this thesis. And the thesis is not just coming up with what the idea is, but finding resolution, like financial resolution, ways to make that work and like implement it. You have to do stuff like survey people out in the world to find out things like, what their opinion is, or would they take a part in this if it was a thing, say like you're an environmental student or something like that. You know what I mean? Is this important to them? Stuff like that. And then you put all of this together to make a bazillion page document that becomes your thesis. Okay. So, given that his background was in psychology and cloud based forensics,
Right.
okay, I can see how the decision making process when a person commits crimes could be valuable to a criminologist.
Okay, I get it.
However,
I get it, and especially if you want
again,
to be
I don't think wait, because this is valid, I have to say it.
okay.
But again,
I'm
even
sorry.
though I have that excuse, I truly don't see how that actually pertains to this particular situation, because even with online schooling, unless he like picked up a weird program that started at a strange time of the year, then by June of 2022, when the Reddit survey starts seeking his information, he should have been done with his master's program. His thesis should have been
Mhm.
handed in, it should have been graded, it should have been
Right.
sent to the state. So
Interesting.
I don't really
Interesting.
feel like that Reddit survey, even if he had posted something similar to that for his master's thesis. I don't think the one that they were referring to in the PCA statement
I
is
just
the same
think
thing.
so. I don't know if any of our viewers, and I don't know if you, Forensic Frenzy, can agree with this, but he's someone who obviously had interest in criminology. I just think about myself and the stupid, crazy questions I ask online because you get curious. And although it seems like a little bit of a morbid thing to ask, it was already one of his interests. A part of me, to a degree, is almost just like, well, couldn't that theoretically be anyone asking these questions? Because even though they seem like morbid questions, we talk here all the time is just like, how does somebody even commit these crimes? How is this even possible? So a part of me is just like, somebody could potentially also just be digging into that, like just trying to figure that because I don't understand it. Every day I come into the office and talking to Andrew and we're just sitting here scratching our heads at different things. It's like, how is this even possible? How do we even get there? So part of me, I'm always when the case happens, the case is gonna happen. But the defense in me is just like, but I ask random stuff online all the time. Like,
Yep.
But
Yep.
nothing like this.
Nothing
I
like
don't think
that.
you've ever asked how to kill somebody, have you?
Correct.
I don't think
So I would agree, possible, but likely not plausible. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do we know, not that we would know, but do we know that he ever put any of this stuff together into a paper that's been published?
I
Maybe not
don't
published.
know that. And from my understanding, I too have heard about the school. I have heard that there was a professor who did come out and say that she apparently helped him put the paper together. Um, that the survey there are some people who will say that she said the survey was accepted and was used as a part of the paper. There are other people who say that she absolutely said the survey was not accepted as a part of the paper and could not be used. So then maybe that would make a little more sense, because maybe it was previously put together for the paper and it wasn't used at that point. But then in June, that previously put together survey was posted to Reddit. So I guess that might make sense, but that is how I've heard that
Interesting.
story.
Interesting. Let's get back to the information that we had in it because I think it pertains to what we were talking about. Lainey, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, so we're looking at March 24th, 2023. Ann Taylor files ex parte motion for out of state service, wants to compel Bethany Funk to testify at preliminary hearing. And then looking forward at April 3rd, 2023, Taylor files a request for a foreign subpoena. April 21st, 23, attorney Kelly Ann Vilora files motion to quash Taylor's subpoena.
So on April 27th, Bethany Funk finally agrees that she's going to speak to the defense. And the day after she agrees, we have a few things that happen. On April 28th, there's an order to seal and redact, and the Batanti affidavit is sealed. It disappeared from the system. Now, they also redact the Reddit search warrant and the receipt of inventory from that as well. And there is an order that's not actually filed until May 31st from Reddit, but it's backdated, no pro-tunc. And that should have been inserted into the iCourt portal on April 28th. So we won't see this until May, and it won't make much sense then. But if we would have seen this when it should have gone into the system, it would have made perfect sense that this Reddit document is pertaining to what was being argued in court at that time, which was whether or not Bethany Funk truly had exculpatory information that would, in fact, help to exonerate or dismiss the charges against the current defendant.
And your contention is that both Ann Taylor and the prosecution team know all about that.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And the prosecution was just ready to say, nope, that's the other guy. And Taylor is going to say, there is no other guy. That's the only guy.
Okay, we'll come back to the nunc pro tunc part, but Then in the month of May, and this is our last slide, in the month of May, May 3rd, there's a notice of tort claim. It's filed by attorney Shannon Gray, who now represented Gonsalves and the Mogan families. And then a few days later, actually, I think it was May 11th, actually, the second notice of tort claim was filed on behalf of the Mogan families. May 16th, surprise, surprise, Mr. Kohlberger is indicted. And then May 31st, we have the actual filing date of the motion you were just talking about, or the order that you were just talking about, the order to seal and redact. The Batanti affidavit is sealed. The Reddit return is redacted. And the term nunc pro tunc is on the last page of the order. And the whole thing is backdated to April 28th. Now, you talked a little bit about the relationship between the two. My question, and we go back, the order is that the affidavit in support of the search warrant is sealed, the search warrant and receipt of inventory is redacted, and the order will remain in effect until further order of the court. I don't understand. The Batanti affidavit was out there and people had seen it. And then the court, posthumously, I guess is the only way I can put it.
It was.
Says to seal it. Both you and I have copies of it, and other people. What did they actually think that people would go? Oh, okay, I'll tear it up and throw it in the shredder. I mean, what was the point of sealing it when it was the I hate to use a phrase, but the cat was out of the bag, the horse was out of the barn. So why would they seal it?
I think that it was sealed because a lot of people took it differently. A lot of people don't see it as it was just sealed and, stowed away. A lot of people see it as it was removed and taken out. It was completely incorrect. Now, it was stowed away because Ann Taylor's interpretation of it was incorrect. But it was stowed away because it's coming back out. Because that information is not exculpatory.
Well, why do you say that? Are you saying that because it inculpates Brian Kohlberger and also another person? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. And so you're saying that both Ann Taylor and the prosecution feel that why wouldn't the prosecution, if the prosecution knows that it's two people, why wouldn't they just say, okay, we know that and we're going to go forward and get the other person? Why wouldn't they just do that?
So for me, I am looking at the Washington State University, and this is speculation, but I am looking at the Washington State University search warrant, and I do see that whatever is there is entirely redacted until the end of Brian Kohlberger's case, and that was by the state's request, and I do know that I have a copy of everything that came out of Brian's office, apartment, storage unit. So what is there other than just like his administration records that would be being sealed from Washington State University? I believe that maybe the other person, the respondent from the Reddit survey, may have also sourced from Washington State University. So I ask myself, well, did they miss the guy? And that takes me back to some things that happened mid-December at Washington State University. We do not prosecute the deceased, and I do believe the person is gone.
Oh, you're talking about Brett Kopacka.
I am.
So you think that there's definitely a tie between Brent Kopacka being unalived when they were serving a warrant and this? You think that all of this leads to him?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Why aren't they being more open about all of this? I mean, why do they post things and then erase things? Why do they seal so much? Why do they redact so much? Why do they hold hearings and then, close half of it and then only have the other half open to people? Why is there so much secrecy in this case? Do you have any more idea than I do?
I don't know that for sure. I have a theory that it is because the other person is deceased, and that at this current time, they don't want those things to be public. There's no one to go back and harass except for his family. and stuff like that. So at this point in time, if he is involved in any way, then I don't think they would want us to know that until we absolutely had to, which would be at trial. And I will say, if Mr. Kopeka was not involved, then I truly believe that they thought he was, and that is how he met his demise. So I will say that if he is not, I think that the law enforcement out there did believe that he was.
Okay. So you think that the law enforcement thinks that he was involved, but they just don't want to be public about that. And we have to tell our viewers that we're just talking, we're speculating,
All speculation.
it's all speculation. It's for our purposes to take a look at this. And I've said all along that because there's been so much secrecy, and no, people have said to me, well, all cases are secret. No, they're not. No, they're not.
No.
We're watching a case here in New England right now. We were watching it on the screen this morning, the Montgomery case, in which there's a trial right now. The father is being on trial for the murder of his daughter, 5-year-old Harmony. A horrible, tragic thing. I almost lost my own composure watching it this morning. But a lot of this has been out there. We've had a lot in public about it. There's another case outside of Boston, the Karen Reed case, which is going on right now. And there's been an awful lot of publicity. In the Murdoch case, there was an awful lot of publicity, about what had happened. He had given, I think 3 statements, and they were all available. I mean, people saw the statements. And so, no, that's just 3 and off the top of my head, and it's hard to pull things out of there, but that's just 3 cases that I can think of. I don't understand why there's such a veil of secrecy in this case. And I've contended all along that that's what's causing all the people to come up with all their theories and speculation. But I think yours is very well founded. I mean, you've dug into these documents and you've seen some things that the rest
Yes.
of us haven't
And
really seen.
I also ask a question. I pose this to both of you as well as viewers. So perhaps they did at one point in time think Brent was involved, and maybe they were wrong. Okay, perhaps they thought so, and they were right. Right?
Right.
If we knew that right now, would we believe them that Brian also was involved if he really were, and that's what they were trying to tell us? So, in other words, for everyone, we feel differently about Brian. And if it became Brian or Brent, how many people would then assume it was Brent and tell themselves they did have the wrong guy? So if it's both of them, then I think that is why they're hiding the other person, is because they don't want people to assume Brian Koberger to be less, you know, an influence of the crime just because the other person seems more capable, more likely, the weapon fits that person. All those things, the things that make people think Brent must be involved to begin with. The difference is, I just think that maybe they're trying to say it was the both of them, whereas some people just strictly say Brian's the wrong guy. It was the students. Brian's the wrong guy. It would have been Brent. Some people even say, the police took out the right guy, and so that's why they're framing Brian Koberger. So if we knew that both of them were an option, I feel like they would lose traction on Brian. And I feel like they think it's very important to get both of them, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense. But as you yourself pointed out a few minutes ago, you can't prosecute a person who's deceased. So they're stuck with
Right.
Brian. They've got to go, full speed ahead with Brian, even though there's a lot of evidence that there was no connection. He didn't know them. So what if he pinged cell towers a dozen
And
times?
yes, and the other person being gone is very beneficial to Brian because they can't speak for themselves. So
that's a hell of a way to put it, but it's true. It's absolutely true from a legal point of view. I mean, they can't testify against each other. Now, I read something, I'm not sure where. I think I might have heard it. You and I both were on a live about 5 or 6 days ago. Someone somewhere said, and I can't find it anywhere, someone somewhere said that Bethany, the thing that she saw and or heard was she looked out her window and she saw 3 people leaving 1122 King Road. I mean, where does that come from? I mean, I'm not
Okay.
saying that.
I do know where that came from, and that is unconfirmed. I don't support that, just so you know, but I will tell you where it came from.
Okay. Okay.
A while back, there was a woman who was doing her rounds. Did you guys watch the cyber sleuthing Paramount Plus thing?
No.
Okay, so there is a Paramount Plus um, feature on the Idaho 4 case. It is called Cyber Sleuthing, and they are 54-ish minutes, and there's three. So for just about 3 hours, they go on and they have people from YouTube and TikTok on there, and they talk about this case, and they talk about the rumors that were going on and how YouTubers and TikTokers didn't really help and, stuff like that, and how we got to where we are, and how, at the beginning we were all incorrect to end up with this name of this man that no one had on their radar.
Right.
Um, there is a woman in that, and I wanted to talk to you about what it is, because I want you to go back and watch it. There is a woman in that, and she is the source of the Bethany saw multiple people, and there are multiple people involved. Her name is Kim. At the time that she was doing rounds on YouTube and stuff like that, she was known as WSU Mom Kim. Um, True or not, this is Kim's story. She has children who were students at WSU at the time, in November through December of 2022 when this was going on.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Is this the same
Mhm.
Kim whose son said that he woke up at 9 o'clock in the morning on November 13th and it was all over TikTok that something had happened at that house? Is that the same woman?
So I don't know if she was supposed to be his mom and he was supposed to be her son, but I do know that both of these things exist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Kim had a daughter though. That's like what
Yeah.
I remember. And
Yeah.
allegedly, Kim not only said things like Bethany saw multiple people outside of her window. She said that Dylan did see the same thing, multiple people outside of her window. It wasn't always consistently Bethany. It was both roommates. Um,
Right.
she also said that there were more than three people involved. She didn't just say three. She also said that her daughter went to WSU. Um, and she was saying that her daughter had been like a part of the classroom that was next door to the one Brian Koberger operated out of. She did also say that like her daughter lived with other people, and that her daughter's roommate on the night of November 13th was her boyfriend's alibi or something like that, or her
Mhm.
boyfriend, the daughter's roommate's boyfriend, was an alibi for someone. She did insinuate later that it was Where is Adam and Jack D. So I just really want you to know the value and the magnitude of what this woman put out there, because it really
Right.
wasn't just she saw multiple people. Um, and then there was also someone who said that she just simply saw like a nude man. So in
Right.
reality,
Right.
those are just two entirely different stories. So I
Right.
don't really think I believe either of them was really what she saw.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories out there, and again, the secrecy that just surrounds this case has caused a lot of people to come forward with these things. But I remember way, 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 way back in the early days of this whole thing, hearing the story about how this fellow woke up early in the morning and he was supposed to go to work, but he couldn't go to work because the TikTok was just blowing up, and everybody in town knew what had happened at 11:22, except for the police. Now we don't know, and again, we're speculating, but there has to be an explanation for the 8 hour delay between the time the crimes are said to have happened, whether it was in the 3 o'clock hour or, as the PCA says, between 4:06 and 4:20. Something happened during that time. And the police themselves, in some of the early press conferences, acknowledged that when they got there, after they got the call at 11:58, when they got there, there were other people, there were friends standing around outside of the place. So something happened, and we don't know what. But I wanted to share something else that was in your recitation of what was happening. And you yourself said, it may or may not have anything at all to do with it. But also in the timeline there, the state indicated and filed a Brady-Giglio notice. And that was interesting. And I don't know. You yourself said that it may or may not be related. And I'm happy to talk about what Brady-Giglio means, but do you have a theory as to whether or not it's related?
So I do. I think that at that time, maybe there is a chance that the prosecution did not know that the Reddit warrant had been being sat upon. But in the same instance, I don't, once it's opened, I don't really understand, putting I mean, I guess does it really matter anymore at that point? So I guess I have a toss up with that. Um, they did make it available, like, so I'm not really sure why they would file the Brady notice
Well, they
if
have
it
to.
was okay. So that then
Yeah.
absolutely, I think that, yeah. I was kind of having a
Um,
toss up as to whether or not I thought that they had to, even if it, like they had actually really, because really what happened there was in the same day
yeah.
they made they made the Reddit available for the other side, I believe. But I also
Right.
believe that that day they were like, oh, by the way, this Brady thing. So because of the fact that I think that they had actually had that for 6 weeks, maybe the prosecutor did look at that and say, well, just in case she wants to turn this into something, let me
Right.
file this notice of Brady.
Well, others have actually mentioned names, and I know that names are out there, and I don't want to get into it for a lot of reasons. I don't want to slander anybody, but others have mentioned the Brady-Giglio, and they've mentioned the names of police officers who have been involved in other arrests and other cases, and there have been problems, and so that's out there. But just for our viewers who are not aware of Brady-Giglio, what Brady is it comes from Brady versus Maryland, and it comes from a case in which the final Supreme Court holding was that if police know of exculpatory information without even a discovery request or anything else, they are under an obligation to actually give that information over to the defense. Then Brady-Giglio is a case which says that if any witness, including a police officer, especially a police officer, has had issues in the past and there's impeachment material against that police officer, and the prosecution, the state intends to put that person on the stand in the case, the state has the duty and the obligation to disclose that information to the other side. So that's why I said, they have to, not that they always do. And I will say that we'll get comments about that.
I was going to say our commenters are
But
very
they're
strong
required.
about
The
that.
state is required to put that information forward. Now, you might ask, what kind of information could it be? Well, the case law is pretty specific, and there's a manual that lists the types of Giglio material. It could be any finding of misconduct relating to the truthfulness or bias of that officer, any past or pending criminal charge. It could be any allegation of misconduct regarding truthfulness, bias, or integrity. It could be prior findings by a judge that an officer has testified truthfully. Any misconduct that casts a substantial doubt on the accuracy of any evidence. So it could be an evidentiary issue. Information suggesting that the officer is biased for or against a defendant. And it could be information that the officer's ability to perceive and recall the truth is impaired. So there are a lot of different grounds on which that could be made. And obviously, like everything else, it was sealed. But I just found it interesting that they did bring that information out, that depending on what it is, that could be a big hole in the case. We did a previous episode on holes in this case, and that could be a hole if one of the Idaho state police officers or one of the Moscow local police officers had a issue like that. That could be a big problem in the case. So I tend to believe, you said it may or may not be involved, and you're right, we don't know, but I would tend to have an educated guess that it does have something to do with it. I don't know.
Correct. And I also feel like it's pretty important that the Batanti affidavit was, before it was hidden, it was originally Exhibit A, of identification evidence,
Yeah.
which I believe she intends to use with the exculpatory information together. So Dylan saw someone, Bethany saw someone, and we have we have this exhibit from Richard Batanti, which is a part of our identification evidence, which I just think means that she is questioning Dylan's identification because Bethany saw another person. So I think that brings together for me that they did not see the same person. They could not have. And then I think about identification evidence and how you go about identifying someone. Like I said before, you bring in
Mhm.
that parade of people
Mhm.
and you try and have the witness point out who they think they saw that night or that
And it has to
day.
be non-suggestive. It has to be a non-suggestive lineup. You can't have, you can't have one guy with bushy eyebrows and then have all the others have shaved eyebrows. You can't do that.
Yes. Yes. You can't have
Um,
given any inkling as to who you were suggesting that they look for in the lineup or anything like that. And I think that Dylan may have identified the defendant, but when presented the same lineup, Bethany did not. And
and
that
and
could potentially be the exculpatory evidence, is that Bethany just identified somebody completely different or was not able to identify the defendant.
well, just on its face, I mean, Dylan was up on the second floor, and she, if I'm not mistaken, saw this fellow, and he exited out the sliding glass door on the second floor. How could Bethany have seen that when she's on the first floor? Her bedroom is down on the first floor. So just by the layout of the house, how could they have seen the same person?
So
I've
there are
never
some people who have a theory that although he went out the slider, he went around one way or the other and then ran past Bethany's bedroom window. So that's where they're getting that idea from, that she
right.
could have potentially also seen the same person. But again, to battle that, I would say that I think there is some serious question as to whether or not Bethany was able to identify Brian. It doesn't
Oh, I
matter if
agree with you.
Dylan did or it doesn't matter if Dylan did or didn't, because if you have two witnesses in the same home and even just one attacker, how are they not identifying the same person? So
Right.
that would become
Well,
exculpatory regardless.
of course, I agree with you. And the other thing is, if it was called Koberger, and if he went out the back slider, and if we're going with that version of facts, and those are like a bunch of ifs, he allegedly would have parked his car up the hill behind the building where he could go around that apartment building and then park and look down into Madison Mogan's window. So if that's a lot of ifs, I get it. But if it was Koberger, he wouldn't have come around the front. That wasn't the way
I
he
don't
went
think
in, and
so.
it, yeah, I
Nope.
don't either. So anyhow, I've never bought that it was two people. And why don't we leave a little bit of a cliffhanger so people will tune into our second episode as to why you, Forensic Frenzy, think that there's evidence that it was definitely two people and not one. So why don't we leave it on that note?
All right.
Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Lainey, do you have any closing thoughts? I always ask you, do you have any closing thoughts today?
This episode is a total doozy. I mean, I think that a lot of people can relate to me where it's nice having another opinion. Like we had Everywhereville CJ on, and people have seen your collabs on other channels. But there's just something about hearing other people's thoughts that just makes my skin crawl to think, because when you've been looking at this case, I think a lot of us tend to kind of see it from what we think and have this one idea of it. And then having our minds kind of open to like this new door of these new potentials, it's just like, oh my God, like it's anxiety inducing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The whole Reddit thing is a rabbit hole that so many people have gone into for hours and hours and hours. And it's just really nice hearing you talk about it, because you don't hear about it that much.
Okay,
Yeah,
don't
I
forget to
agree.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And also go to Forensic Frenzy's YouTube channel. She does a great job really analyzing a lot of this stuff. And we're lucky that she joined us. And we hope you have a great day.
Thank
You have been watching About the Law, a production of the law offices of Andrew D. Myers in Methuen in the Merrimack Valley of Massachusetts, and in Derry, just outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. Remember to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to share it with your friends and others. If you'd like to talk to me about an injury case, a car accident, a slip and fall, a serious bodily injury case, or some other case, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to talk to you. You can contact us through my website at attorney-myers.com. We have a contact us block, or you can call on one of the telephone numbers we've given there, or you can email me at andrew@attorney-myers.com. The foregoing is offered for informational purposes only. It is not intended as and does not constitute legal advice. Laws vary widely from state to state. You should rely only on the advice given to you during a personal consultation by a local attorney thoroughly familiar with state laws and the area of practice in which your concern lies. This podcast must be and hereby is labeled advertisement in some jurisdictions. And that's that.
That's that.
Tunnels. It's all about the tunnels. There were tunnels. Don't you think there were tunnels?
Oh my goodness, the tunnels.